Good evening. We'll now begin the recording of our regular monthly meeting. With a quorum being present, the meeting was called to order at 6 p.m. Tonight, we immediately convened an executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment and discipline dismissal of 3 particular persons in current litigation. At this time, I'd like to call for a motion second to end executive session and return to the open meeting. Motion, Mr. Mitchell, second, Mr. Peters. All in favor?
Aye.
All. Motion carried. Okay, pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A motion to go to roll call.
Ms. Berry?
Here.
Ms. Graves?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Hamilton?
Here.
Ms. Mitchell?
Here.
Ms. Morgan?
Here.
Mr. Peters?
Here.
Mr. Webanero?
Here.
Approval of the agenda. Motion. Again, of the addenda. Oh, sure. And I've got the addenda. With the addenda. Sure I have it. Mrs. Mitchell, second. Second. Mrs. Graves, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. And we need approval of the minutes of the February 14th meeting. Motion. Motion, Mr. Peters, second, Mrs. Morgan. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. And we have recognition of our school business administrator, Mr. Sapp, who will be retiring on April 3rd. Randy began his career at Peru Central School in March of 2005. His dedication and expertise in managing the financial and administrative operations of our school have been instrumental in ensuring the smooth functioning of our institution. Randy has demonstrated exceptional leadership and management skills in overseeing our budget and financial planning, procurement, payroll, and other critical areas. He has ensured that our school operates within its means while maintaining a high standard of academic excellence. His attention to detail and ability to manage complex financial information have been invaluable in ensuring that our school's resources are utilized effectively and efficiently. He has also been instrumental in securing grants and funding for various programs, enabling us to offer more opportunities to our students. In addition to his financial expertise, Randy has also shown a keen understanding of the educational needs of our students. He's worked closely with our faculty and staff to provide them with the resources and support they need to deliver high-quality education to our students. Thank you, Randy, for all your service, and best wishes on your retirement. Recognize 2 food service director Janine Kerr, who will be retiring on April 7th. Janine began her career at Peru Central School in August of 2006. Her outstanding dedication, hard work in providing nutritious and delicious meals to our students has been evident. She's been an integral part of our school community, working tirelessly to ensure that our students have access to healthy meals that meet their dietary needs and preferences. She has implemented innovative ideas and initiatives to improve the quality and variety of our school meals, such as introducing locally sourced ingredients and incorporating international cuisine into the menu. In addition to her culinary expertise, she also prioritizes food safety and sanitation, ensuring that our cafeteria is always clean, organized, and up to date with health and safety regulations. But perhaps most importantly, Janine has a genuine passion for ensuring that our students are well fed and nourished, both physically and mentally. She goes above and beyond to foster a welcoming and inclusive environment in the cafeteria where students feel comfortable and cared for. Thank you, Janine, for your service and best wishes on your retirement.
Jeannie even said thank you. She due to the climate weather outside,
I
chose not to come to
certainly do not blame anybody. I thank you for the 6 of you coming. You did not have to come tonight. Well, Mr. Urban, maybe you have to.
He can snowshoe home.
Yes. Okay, we have C, we have acknowledgement for the drama club students and the faculty and staff in the recent performance of Beauty and the Beast. Recognize the Peru Drama Club for their recent production of Disney's Beauty and the Beast. 6 staff members provided leadership. 37 students performed on stage along with 16 student crew members and an orchestra of 27, including 12 students. Additionally, the production was assisted by a number of alumni as well as parent volunteers. The show was seen by over 2,100 members of the community. Another 62 attended tea parties held at Saturday pre-show, where they were able to meet and greet with the cast. So thank you, that was wonderful.
Job.
It's fantastic.
Two, I would be remiss too in just congratulating all the athletes too. I'm sure that we'll have an update on winter sports probably the next meeting, but all of our athletes are doing a job with lots of different things and going different places and so on. I don't think we have anything more. We were going to have a recess for a few minutes for recognition of anybody. Just very limited here. I think we're.
But I think Polly's gonna do your photo.
We got a photo, oh yes, there are a couple of snacks, so, snacks behind me,
We
so,
can do a quick 5-10 minutes.
yeah, sure, yeah, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so people get back on the road, we don't want anything to happen to people.
So I just need a motion and a second. to
Oh,
recess.
sorry, for food? No, motion a second for recess. Okay, you got it. All in favor? Okay, that's awesome, motion carried. Motion, Mrs. Mendel, second. Governor, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. I did not have anybody on,
Online
email
or-
or con, nobody here. Okay, superintendent's report.
So, we've been working diligently on trying to get everything ready for the budget, working on conversations with the leadership team, on different, aspects of where the proposals that we talked about last time would be coming out of, and what grants and things that we've been working on. Additionally, we're getting prepared for, one of the things I think I talked to the board about before was that the initiative of circles and the professional development we're gonna be doing this week, which is gonna be on Friday. We will be also, we've been doing that with our leadership team, so that's been part of our, practice. So we've been doing that as if we want that in our schools, we have to lead with that, so we've been doing that as well. And, I think that that's really, important aspects of of what we're doing. So the 17th of March is our professional development day, and we actually have the calendar coming up in this agenda as well, which I can talk to you a little bit more when we get there. But we have circles for people to participate in. We have a variety of action plans for teachers to participate in, and there's also parent conferences. So what we ended up doing with this particular superintendent's day was to also, there's kind of a conflict a little bit in contract, or maybe not conflict, but it really comes down to elementary staff has in the contract it speaks of parent conferences, but the secondary side of campus it doesn't, and the parent conferences is not part of. So what we've done, and I think that we're going to keep working with the union, and they've been super great at having these conversations of how do we address the overall need of parents to be able to meet with their kids, their students, teachers, but also take care of the professional development needs of our teachers. So teachers were given the option to have parent conferences in the elementary school, so many will be having parent conferences, but we're also going to be working with this idea because now our teachers are actually meeting with parents on a much more regular basis because they have that opportunity to just, Zoom or do a Google Meet with a parent, and it can be quicker and those types of things. So we're going to be working a little bit more, and when we get the calendar, I'll talk to you a little bit more about it, but I think we've got a pretty good day planned. We also do have an open house that we're going to have in the district office for any staff member that wants to just come in and congratulate Janine and Randy for all their time that they've worked here. So those are some of the things that are going to happen on the 17th.
Good. Thank you, and thank you for, I know you and Shannon worked well on the newsletter and things like that, very nice. I know a couple of people made comments about, receiving something that was an overall piece too, so thank you.
I'm glad people liked it, and I'll say we also have some other ones that we're working alongside CBES, and they have stories that are way out, like, I'm like, okay, we can't put that in next, we'll do this one next, so we're actually doing a lot of jacking around for our next things, and also the budget book, the flyer we sent out for the budget book.
Mr. Moreno?
Well, thank you. It's lovely baseball, softball weather that we've got here. It's a great start to spring sports. It's actually depressing. First of all, on behalf of PAT, I want to congratulate Randy on your retirement. I know we've sat across the table from you on more than a few occasions, And the one thing I can say is, while there's been some times where we've disagreed, you have always been fair and open-minded and willing to have discussions with us at the table. So we appreciate that, and good luck. We hope you get to do all those things that you enjoy that you talked about at last meeting. So. And again, just kind of, we've been in discussion with Mr. Storms on several things. He talked about the calendar that's going to come up, and the parent conference. So we're continuing to have discussions when things come up, and the once a month liaison meetings have really been allowed us to be proactive instead of reactive when things come up. So that's been really good. One thing I do want to kind of talk to you about tonight, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I do want to talk about. So last Wednesday, Thursday, I attended a committee of 100 down in Albany on behalf of NISA. And what the committee of 100 is NISA members from all over the state go, and we lobby at the Capitol, trying to push educational programs, and with the budget and stuff like that. So one of the big pushes this year from NISA is, one is APPR, to hopefully put a pause on APPR and get the legislature to put that back into local control. We did speak with Billy Jones, or Assemblyman Jones, and Senator Dan Steck, and Assemblyman Matt Simpson. And all three seem to be favorable to that proposal. Now we'll see what what the governor and the rest of the senators and assemblymen from around the state, but hopefully that will go through. The other big push is fixing Tier 6. So I just want to kind of throw some numbers out at you with Tier 6. And if you don't mind, I've got some papers I can pass around so you can kind of look. I'll start with this one now if you want to take one and just pass it down. And I will say these are very rough numbers because, so what I did is I took a new hire at Peru, went back to our 2009 contract. They would have been the last people who would have been hired under Tier 4. And you can see that the salary on that sheet, it goes down the left-hand column. The italicized are actually when we get outside beyond this contract, so I kind of just projected a modest, like 2.5% increase just to kind of look at some numbers. So Tier 4, we all, they contributed 3% for the first 10 years of their career. And then I have projected, Tier 6 starting in September of 2012. So went back to the 2012 contract, worked the numbers down through, and these are just the numbers from the second column, the Bachelor plus 36 column. And again, there's some projections there. I went with the same thing, a 2.5% increase just to kind of look at some comparisons. But you'll notice the contribution rate on Tier 6. They start at 3.5%, and as they move down, possibly by the time they end their career after 30 years, they're going to be paying 6% of their salary. They're going to contribute to the retirement system for their entire career. Now, what I did here is this is just somebody who 30 years retires at 55. With Tier 6, in order to get full retirement, you have to work till you're 63. You can see at the bottom the total contribution. A Tier 4 member, $15,160 potentially. A Tier 6 member is going to contribute a little over $110,000 to the retirement system in their career. What a difference. The difference, it's right there, $95,000 in the contributions. At age 55 with 30 years of service, a Tier 4 member, their final average salary is based on their last 3 years, or 3 years of their best salary. In this case, it's about $99,000. Tier 6, it's based on the last 5 years, or their best 5 years salary. In this case, a little bit more, $99,000. Tier 4 member who retires at 55 with 30 years of service will receive 60% of their final average salary, so about $59,000. A tier 6 member retiring at age 35 with 30 years of service, their final average salary is about $5,000 less at about $54,000. But because they don't work till 63, they also get an age factor penalty, which means they're only gonna, that member who's retiring at 55 after 30 years of service, their pension, their yearly pension, is 48% of that 55%, so their yearly pension is $26,000. And again, these are some rough numbers, but these are consistent with some presentations I've seen around the state and talking to other people and retirees. I think maybe Mrs. Berry, you might have seen this with Rod Sherman and the retirees. And the reason I bring this up is not to make people sympathize with our tier 6 members. But in talking to people, we've already heard stories of college students that are in the education program that are changing their mind because of tier 6. People don't want to go into this profession. And it's not just teachers. Tier 6 affects any state employee, so CSEA, police, troopers, COs, public works. So what I'm asking is to reach out, if you don't mind, to Assemblyman Jones, Senator Steck. This is one of the pushes from NISA, and I'm asking members of our board, administrators, this will make it difficult for administrators to recruit new hires in the future, and ask them to make this a priority with budget and legislature to fix tier 6. By the way, just looking at some numbers, current PAT members at Peru, we have about 117 tier 4 members and about 107 tier 6 members. So just to kind of throw some numbers with what we currently have at Peru. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go Mets.
Okay, now on to our community budget forum. Mr. Sapp. One more now? It's not. He does a little.
First and foremost, thank you very much for those very kind and generous words. It's been a true honor serving the community of Peru Central School District and the district itself. Without any further ado, let's get on with the community budget. Would you like the abbreviated version given the?
Yeah.
So a lot of these slides are.
I think everyone here has seen.
Yeah, a lot of these slides we've been through already this year, so I'm going to go quickly. The school budget defined, it's a 12-month document, serves as the legal basis for the tax levy. Creation of the budget, we have a series of meetings and workshops. This is this year's budget. It's our general budget. We're now in the process of preparing next year's budget. Here's how this year's budget broke out. Here's on the revenue side. Lion's share is state aid. Here's the foundation aid, which is state aid, the general portion of state aid, and also the tax levy allocations over time. You'll notice in one particular year, between 1920 and 2021, it was actually, the foundation aid was actually flat. With regards to the tax levies, the total amount collected, and the rates are actually per thousand assessed value. Levy limit. Each school district is unique. Here's the growth factor that factors into that levy limit. This year we meet the maximum, which is capped at 2%. Every year there's a stress test that's subjected to municipalities and school districts. This is Peru Central School District's stress test. This year we had a score because we had our expenditures exceeded our revenues last year. We still, however, were considered fiscally strong. This is our fund balance analysis. You can see comparatively to other school districts, all school districts were comparatively aligned on the unassigned fund balance, slightly behind North Country. In terms of a total fund balance, you can't say that we're retaining too much fund balance when all school districts are retaining approximately 36% of their gross expenditures, and we're retaining approximately 21%. North Country schools are about 40%. As I indicated before, we had an operating deficit this past year. Multi-year financial plan. 23 projections. We are projecting, as we had talked about when we were planning this year's budget last year, that we would again run in the red. However, our deficit that we're forecasting at this point is approximately $600,000. And last year, when we were doing the budget hearing, we had projected approximately $870,000. So we're a little bit less than what we projected. With regards to the tax levy limit calculation for next year, that's our levy limit. And how that calculates out to a levy limit increase of 2.38%. Looking at a multi-year projection, this does not include reductions or budget enhancements. You can see in next year, what I do want to indicate up here, however, the circle number is the state aid. We received a very generous state aid packet this year. And these are the year out. This is a drastic improvement in our position on years out. Demonstrate that in terms of a picture of expenditures and revenues. What we find is a much more aligned multi-year picture in terms of revenues and expenditures in comparison to what we had last year at the budget hearing, where we had a major concern with our expenditures exceeding our revenues on years out. And that again, of course, was our budget hearing slide from last year. We still have, of course, some challenges. We're limited in terms of the allowable growth factor limit is at 2%, and that's obviously, we could exceed that if we did want to, but we'd have to go above the levy limit. Tax levy is approximately 37% of our total revenue. Our expenditures, salaries are obviously increasing at a rate exceeding 2%. All of our agreements are settled this year, so we do have accurate numbers. There are inflationary pressures impacting our expenditures. And then we still have some lingering COVID-related expenses or uncertainties. These are some parameters that we identified. We agreed that we would not exceed the tax levy cap at the 2.38%. We identified a general direction, was to maintain programs with only necessary enhancements, and that would expand educational and social and emotional programs using COVID-related funds. These are some guiding principles with regards to the preparation of this year's budget, or excuse me, next year's budget. We have some federally COVID relief funds that are currently supporting programs, and we have used those. Just a little look at what we've done with some of those funds. With regards to positions that we plan on continuing to support next year. These are budget themes from previous years. And as is always the case, we are attempting to find the right balance between the taxpayer, programs, and sustainability. That concludes the formal presentation. Floor is open for any questions or concerns.
Randy, I have a few questions. In the multi-year budget that we're looking at goes out to 2026, I think.
Yeah.
I think 2025 is when we have to start buying electric buses, according to the current plans. They're gonna be 3 or 4 times the expense of current buses. Is that something we factored into our multi-year?
No.
Okay. So my preference would be we start to save for that, right? Like unless some miracle comes through where the governor decides that they're not gonna do that, or something intervenes, right? We're gonna have a huge expense come through years that we're not budgeting for. That's a concern for me that I have to incorporate in our budget. Overall, like looking at the budget, we're running in the red this year, we're planning to run in the red next year. The only reason that, as I understand it, and I'd like to verify this, Randy, the only reason we're not still forecasting a deficit moving forward is a very generous package from the state this year, right? That's essentially what the governor came out with. State funding is, I think, a surprise to a lot of folks. It's generous. That has covered our revenue gap, but not for our earnings. Is that accurate?
What's that?
That it's the change in state funding that has covered our revenue gap this year, or that will cover it projecting into the next, we're going to have 3 years going into 2026.
The revenues considerably increase as a result, as they did in all schools, most schools.
But we don't have that guarantee moving forward.
No, we built the multi-year based on assumptions, not as generous as what we received this year, so.
And then, sorry, one more question. The slide that has the roles that we've used with COVID funding, I count at least 15. Do we have a total count of how many roles in our district are funded with COVID relief grants currently?
How many what?
How many roles are funded with COVID relief grants?
How many roles?
Positions.
Positions. Those are the positions that are currently.
Okay, so like, we haven't counted that, because it says permanent building substitutes in both. Do we know how many of those?
Not two. Not two.
So like, I'm
Two
counting through,
There's-
at least 15 roles.
There's a number of positions in each building.
But we added two.
Building subs you're asking.
Yeah,
I'm-
didn't we add two with COVID funds?
Yeah.
So just one in each, okay. So there's
Two.
two in each.
I can mention the exact number of each one.
We just added 5,
5 building
Yeah.
substitutes.
Okay.
and we had, I think, 8 already.
So that's, if I'm doing like the rough math, that's 18 roles that we're funding with grants that are gonna run out?
Well, I think that we might know that when you look at building substitutes, for example, building substitutes are one of those things, we added an additional number of building substitutes now, more than we've had in the past, just because we're at a crisis in regards to staffing buildings, right? But if things start to level back out, we'll get to a place where we can go back into, where we didn't have as many building substitutes, would be the long range goal, you know, so when you're talking about the end of this, I think that we can go, that would be something I would be having conversations with everyone about. But we've gotta start to see the turn, we will have to start to see a turn in employment of people, like, you know, the building subs is an example of probably one of the most cost-effective additions that we have on the list.
Is it true that we would still have to offset that with full-time position salaries? Like, it wouldn't go away, we would just shift it to
They're
those are
not
full-time
full-time.
hires.
So those are position, the building substitute positions are a daily position, if that's what you're asking. But what I would hope we would get to a place where it starts to level off, right, where the number of people, like, we actually are able to have a pool of per diem substitutes that we can actually call in, like, when, 5 years ago, you had people that you could just call in and they would, right now, there's not anybody to call in, you don't have anybody to come in and be the substitute that's not being paid on a regular basis. So, I see what you're saying in regards to, like, what happens to these, like, that's a concern of yours.
Yes, so,
Okay.
so my concern is, we are already running in the red, we are heading into a macroeconomic climate that looks like it's gonna continue to recede. We have unplanned expenses that are not accounted for in our budget. We have 15 to 18 positions that are being paid with grants and not in our budget. And so all of that to me is like, now is the time to address that in our budget, and I would like to see us plan for how we're gonna get ahead of that for the next
So I think there's two sides to it though. I think that we have to recognize too is that there's gonna be things that are in our budget, that we're talking about this year and the positions you're referring to, that yes, we can pick up through attrition. So if we have someone who, for example, retires, we can look at that as we move forward. We're also gonna have to look at, any place that we're, you know, that there may be some areas that we may be able to cut as we move forward. I think what we have to also be mindful of is the fact that there's grant money, and the grant money is very specific in learning loss, right? So there's talking about how do you address learning loss, and the only way that we're truly seeing success in learning loss right now is to provide more staffing for learning loss. I think that that's the only way schools in general are seeing success in learning loss. So one of the things I think we need to be constantly looking at is, okay, yeah, if we add something, yeah, we're gonna go back to the table. We're gonna have to be back at that table having some conversations. And unfortunately, I think when you look at the big picture of education in general, there will be days when we're gonna have to come back and say, all right, we're gonna have to tighten the belt here and look at do we need quite as many of the building substitutes in the future? Can we cut a building substitute? Can we move away from a data coordinator, which I know this was we're gonna be moving away from anyway. Those types of things, like those are pieces that I think we're gonna have to look at, and I think it goes back to, we will have to do it, but it's gonna be one of those things where we have to also get through this period of time where we have to spend this grant money.
See, I think the fundamental problem that you're bringing up is there is an infusion of resources that are being directed towards schools now to address COVID-related issues. That funding will not continue beyond a certain point, nor will some of those programs.
The need for it.
And that understanding has and is understood. We have an infusion of approximately $6.2 million of federal funds. There is no continuation of those funds. And there also is a deadline for the expenditure of those funds. And 70% of our expenditures are related to personnel. The services that are necessary to address the issues that are confronted by the school are going to be personnel heavy.
And the grants are what,
And-
2 more years, Randy, or 1 more year?
They run through the end of next year with the
Was there
settlement
some-
of, in
some-
September or October of 2022.
25, right.
Yeah. The next slide presentation will have that,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
next workshop.
The other thing too, you had
So-
mentioned the $600,000 deficit, but the last time at the meeting, you told us that
Yeah.
we thought that would be much less.
Well, I don't wanna ever.
No, but no. You're not gonna tell me how much less. but you said it would be-
It's March, and June 30th is the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
And, you know, you're a ways out, so I don't wanna predict what's gonna happen between now and then, but what we're forecasting for next year is, you know, you have an infusion of state aid,
Yep.
and you have an infusion of federal aid for next year.
You can't stop it.
The state aid, you can't stop that from coming.
Right.
You also have an obligation to make reasonable decisions on the expenditure of those. I would like to say that you could bank that. You can't bank it. You can bank it to a degree. But the state says unassigned fund balance is capped at 4%. Now, you looked at that slide that I showed you, and you saw that everyone is above that. We were at 8%. But the fact of the matter is that it is supposed to be, unassigned fund balance should be at 4%.
So
Municipalities are not capped.
saving, to Eddie's point, is not necessarily possible in that, in this model.
If you go back to that slide that compares us to other school districts, the unassigned fund balance, everybody should be at 4%.
So,
We're at 8,
we're.
others are at 12.
Exactly. So if no one else is
So-
like not saving, I don't wanna say we shouldn't be saving either. So like, I don't,
But you are also going to be having an audit.
I would, I mean, I don't know the penalties.
So you,
To have an audit that
No.
say we've saved too much versus to come 2025 and say we don't have money to buy the things necessary for education in the district, feels like.
but you also can, you know, be, and this is one of the things that I'm telling you to do, and I told you at the last presentation, is you're gonna have less fund balance allocated to this next year's budget, so you can stick it in a reserve for the capital fund, and that's what I would recommend that you do. And those of you who were here at the last presentation, remember that slide where I told you that that's what I would recommend that you consider doing, because that's what you should do. You have a capital project coming up. You have a capital reserve that was approved by voters at the last year that is unfunded at this point.
And so we can fund
We're
that.
going to release some of that. I mean, we're setting the budget up to release some of that so that you can make a decision when you know your numbers better at the end of this year to place that in your capital, some portion of it, or appropriate amount in your capital reserve. So that when you get ready to do your capital project, you can turn to that as a source of the local share. You can explore other areas to place reserves in.
For things like
And
helpful.
further do that, but still, and position yourself, as best you can. So, I mean, that's what you should be doing and are being set up to do.
That
The-
sounds like
the-
good advice. For known expenses,
The
like
other,
buses.
you know, the buses that are electric, I will tell you that, you know, I'm not a betting person, but I will bet you there'll be an extension.
Is there anything that we can do?
Because right now, the infrastructure does not exist.
Right.
I don't,
So,
I've been part of
I-
many conversations
no,
with the region, like,
I
I
mean-
would like to believe that's delayed too, but I don't wanna,
And it's
hope is
so-
not a strategy. So
Yeah.
They're not manufacturing them.
They're not making them.
Yeah.
I agree, and I can be pessimistic as anybody about the reality of it happening, but
Yeah.
it is what is laid out in front of us as.
It's what it is.
But the other thing you have to remember is that currently, your transportation aid is very high.
Yep.
you've got a very high, the state is gonna be paying you for your buses.
It's
And
a
they're
sort of
the
cash
ones.
out.
Is that, like, so, all I wanna understand is like, that is in the budget, that we feel like come 2025, we have a good handle on how much of that is gonna be provided by the state, and where we can.
Well,
find
you know,
ways to
they
put
may,
aside
you know,
funds.
the new electric buses, they may change the, I can't predict what the, you know, the A ratio for buses is gonna be and how that's all gonna shake out. But,
Like
yeah, I
90%.
mean, that's a,
And you worry, right, because at the end, if, again, that number of buses they're talking about across the, if they can even get all the buses they need to get, they may change the ratio a little bit because of the amount of money they're gonna have to pay out for them, so we have to take that into consideration. And
But-
every school's in a very similar I'm not saying that we care, right, what the situation others are in, but I think it's just important to understand that everyone's grappling with the same question of how do they move forward with this bus situation.
so one of the things that you can do as a district, which I'm sure that you will be doing, is in your capital project that is about to come, is you can start definitely be planning the infrastructure for those buses, because they're coming. We don't know when, but you've got a capital project that's coming up, and you'd probably be wise to, in that capital project, be planning that.
Right.
It might not happen, you know, in terms of this multi-year plan, but it's coming.
But wasn't there a
Isn't it
grant
closer?
that
So-
you had to, was it this
Yeah.
fall, you had to apply for a certain grant for the
Yeah.
infrastructure from the state? Right.
So, I mean, all those things are things that you can do to plan for, and in preparation for those issues and concerns that are forthcoming. And I think the district is well positioned to address your concerns and issues. It's just a matter of fine tuning them as best one can. Now, I'll also tell you that influx of state aid was a welcome surprise to a lot of us. Because quite frankly, it made the you know, financial position of many school districts improve drastically, right? And that helps a great deal. And it made, and that's a great thing. You know, because the local share is what it is now. So,
Eddie, to your concern about the COVID-funded positions, we actually had this conversation at the, I know you were sick the last meeting. We had talked about that, and the money is there, and if we don't use it, we lose it. We can't bank it, we can't use it on.
My concern is like 2 years of this, year 3, right? We either have to tell those people,
Right.
sorry, you
So
don't have a job
we-
anymore.
I know.
What I was gonna say is we
Right.
actually
They
we
were
brought that
aware
up very
with that.
clearly, and because we brought that up last week, and what Scott had told us is when they're hired, they're told that this is a
Right.
grant funded position, when the money is done, there's no guarantee of continued employment. Which is
Also,
it's not a
what
great
we heard
conversation
at the
to have.
session though, like, school districts rarely follow through with that. The reality is, once a school district brings on employees, they rarely let them go regardless of what's up front. Right?
But if you
I
can
forget the
only
exact
use
stat.
the money
If
for
you can
certain
only use the
things.
money, it's gone.
What you're saying.
Then you find
Right.
another position for that teacher, because like, oh, we such and such, and
Right,
so
but
we
what-
give them
so what
another
is-
position.
So
It's
if,
gonna be,
would,
so my point is, Sarah, it's gonna be an expense to the school district that is not funded by grants. And either we end that, we terminate that relationship with an employee, which I know we say up front, but it doesn't happen 100% of the time, I guarantee it.
I'm
Or we find a new position for that person within the district that we have to fund from elsewhere in our budget.
but my point would be, which what I was trying to say is, if we have $6 million, and it's use it or lose it, and what we're using it for is addressing learning loss right now that is the direct result of the COVID pandemic, which hopefully is now in an endemic phase, which means that if we can fill those gaps now, when the money runs out, hopefully those gaps will be achieved, right? And then we won't need necessarily the same support system in place where we can go in a different way. It's a right now fix for the problems that were created. And that's what the money is specifically earmarked for. You can't save it, you can't use it on replacing the track, you can't do all of these things that could be, you can't build a pool with it, I mean, that would be awesome, but we can't do it.
To your point though, I think that
Yeah.
you make a good point in regards to the fact that typically what people see, right, is that we add positions.
Right.
And then like, okay, well, we can't possibly cut those positions. And I think that we recognize positions in programming, right? That it's going to be somewhat different than what we currently have. And we realize that we're going to be charged with sitting back at a table and discussing, like, we added this. Is this better than what we had before? And if it is, what can we do to change what we're doing? So you're absolutely right. We're going to have hard decisions and real conversations that are gonna have to happen. But we would be better off during a time where we can address learning loss by going in and adding something different. Not just a bunch of the same, but something different. And then see, did the different work? And if it did, then maybe that's what we need to keep, and we need to reevaluate some of the things that we've done historically and say, all right, you know what, we're gonna change this. The other thing is, you know, when you talk about some of the positions that Randy shared, that some of those positions were, instead of doing additional before and after school program, which we're realizing really we're not getting, staff are not at a place where they can do that kind of work right now. We ended up saying, all right, in the elementary school, we're gonna add positions to reduce class size. We all agree around the table, that lower class size is great, but we may have to go back to raising class size. We're gonna have to look at sections in high school and middle school to say, all right, how many sections of things do we have? Do we have any fluff here that we can cut back on a little bit? Can we readdress that? But that's gonna be those hard decisions that we're gonna have to sit around the table and have conversations about after and when things start to slide the other way.
And historically, we have made a number of cuts. Randy alluded to it last meeting. I remember one year we had, Randy, close to 30 cuts of staff.
That was such a budget meeting, I think I went to.
Yep, so we have done that.
Well, I will also
Historically.
say, I think one of the interesting things is more specific to this particular era is the number of employees that we're hiring with and without the certification, right? So when they come in, very candid conversation is had. I've had them with many people, but in addition to that is, if you're not a certified person, you're not bumping someone who is. So all of those factors are gonna come into play as well. So I agree. I'm not gonna say to you that we don't have hard work ahead, but I think that it's good work right now, that if we can make a difference and so show something that it's a positive for this period of time, you know. And I think the other part that's really difficult with this are the grants. Because when the grants first came out, it was a mad dash to get the grants written. It was a mad dash to get the money. And there was little to no guidance. And only right now, even though the audit's coming up this summer of them, we only just learned last week of like, what do we have to produce? What data do we need? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so we're digging up old data from even last year to address it. In hindsight, right? It's always in hindsight, but had they given all of us that in the beginning, that would have been wonderful stuff to be able to drive the conversation.
So I think if you look at this right here, the general direction and strategy. So in the general fund, what you will see, I hope, in the budget that will be presented as a base budget is it's merely the maintenance of the general fund programs with only necessary enhancements. So a very small, relatively small, impactful increases in terms of enhancements, all right? And then you'll see the expansion of educational, social, and emotional programs using COVID-related funds. So we're not looking at expanding the general fund expenditures with that lump sum state aid that came crashing upon us, right? Because that would be, and I agree, probably irresponsible, knowing the climate we are facing down the road, right? Because we could say, you know what, we need all these positions, and we're gonna build them in the general fund. And there would be no way to sustain those. We don't plan to do that. We plan to use the COVID-related funds as they are appropriately designated for.
And you and I have a conversation, I can walk you through those so that you feel comfortable, at least understand, so that you have better, even more questions, you may have more questions, right, at the next meeting, but I can walk you through all of those enhancements so that you hear the same thing we heard. I think that would be helpful, just so that you understand what the mindset is
the second bullet, the expand the educational, social, emotional programs using COVID-related funds, and that is exactly what they're supposed to be used for. So I don't think, if you look at the basis of what we're trying to do with next year's budget, I don't think you'll be uncomfortable with that, okay? Because we can't stop the state aid from coming,
No.
and we're using it to close
Caps.
the gaps, right? Between expenditures and revenues, okay? And we're using it to maintain programs. I don't think you would want now to be cutting programs in your base general fund budget and cutting positions now, right? On the possibility of gloom and doom down the road, right? Because you're also sitting on fund balance, right? So I don't know that our general direction and strategy is improper.
No, yeah, I appreciate that. I think you've spoken to my concerns, right? So this is not a significant investment in you. It's maintaining general funds, necessary enhancements. I appreciate all of that. And like Sarah, to your point, like, yeah, we have the money, we absolutely want to use it and have the best impact we can for our students and in the district, and I fully agree with that, but I don't want to do it blind. So Scott, like you said, it's like, there's gonna be hard conversations in 2 years.
There absolutely is.
And this group right here, like in all of the faculty and leadership, we're gonna have to prioritize, like we're gonna do as a district, and I just wanna make sure we're all comfortable with that. And it sounded like maybe 2 specific things you mentioned that we might, could, or should be doing to help anticipate that, right? Like allocating that capital fund and the infrastructure as a potential, an additional capital project to look at. I would love to start like focusing on those specific things, just to make sure, like, I don't wanna be doom and gloom, but I'm not optimistic.
No,
And so, as much as we can stow away and store like that,
At least
we're just
it's
not
not
gonna get much better.
And I think next week you're going to designate some of the buckets that,
Yes.
the compass, you know, the enhancements that we saw last week. You're going to tell us more what can go into that.
It'll tell you of the enhancements, it will
Yeah.
tell you what is going proposed for the general fund, and what is
Right.
proposed for the COVID relief
Right.
funds. And also, it will, again, tell you the quantity of those COVID relief funds, which is high. And, so.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, move on to consent agenda 15A through G. Do I have a motion? Motion, Mrs. Morgan, second, Mrs. Mitchell. Any discussion on anything 15A through G? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. 16A through F, and F we now have figures for the buses, rather than TBDs. And we will have 3 resolutions, the one that we did on October, and then the budget, and then the budget for the buses. So we have a motion for consent agenda A through F. Motion, any discussion? Okay, motion, who's, I'm sorry, who was?
Graves, motion.
Mrs. Gray, motion, second was Mrs. Mitchell, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 17, we have A through additional pay. Have a motion? Motion, Mr. Peters, second, Mrs. Morgan, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Opposed, motion carried. And then we are down to 18. Have a motion for the, what was it called? Motion? Motion, Mr. Peters? Second, Mrs. Mitchell. I have a question. On D, 3, it said that, school will set guidelines for frequency and content of school-wide celebrations where food is served. And, Mrs. Rabdu alluded to it last time, that there would be some discretion of, that there could be something, some kind of celebration. It says school-wide, does that mean that an individual classroom can't do something individually for a certain celebration? And is it each individual school that does that?
I'm not sure, but I'll clarify that.
Yeah.
I remember last time talking about this.
Right, and she, Mrs. Rabowitz said something, that there would be some discretion, that, that there could be some celebrations of some sort, but it does say school-wide. Does that mean it has to be the whole school doing cupcakes that day? I don't know. I assume it's only individual schools and classrooms on a certain basis. Like Drama Club did a fantastic thing. Can the Drama Club come in and have cupcakes as a celebration, or a cake as a celebration, or something like that? So I would assume why probably shouldn't be in there.
Okay, I will clarify that word, and I'll make sure that I reach back out to the board so the board is, I can gain clarification.
Okay, so other than that one little spot, I didn't have anybody else have any other questions?
Did this have curriculum? I couldn't click on the link one bit, but,
I did the second time. On this one I did, today.
the first time,
The first time it didn't.
Today.
Today.
Oh, today, it did, okay.
Yeah.
Does this have impacts on the, PE requirements in high schools? In this policy specifically?
It
It does not, right? It should,
No, it didn't address it.
it's separate.
Right, it did say that there's no excuse,
Yes.
right?
Right, everybody has to
If it
participate. You
relates,
can't
my
take it away.
only question is, if it's possible to allow varsity level athletes to forego PE classes in favor of additional coursework. In other words, freeing up their schedules to do,
I think that would fall under this policy.
would it fall? Okay.
There's
I don't
language
know.
around how much athletic time every student has to get in a 6-week period.
For sure.
And there's requirements for who can be dismissed from PE class or not. And basically the way the policy was written is no one can be
That's right.
exempted
That's what it
except
said.
for medical conditions.
Okay.
So I think what you're raising.
As a former athletic director, Mr. Berry, can you tell us?
NISBA policy, there is, the secret is that you actually can. If you play, and I can't recall whether it's 2 or 3 varsity level sports, you actually can.
At a certain grade level.
Correct, as a senior
Yeah,
only.
Senior, yeah.
Yeah, and
Senior,
that's
2 or
what
more, not during
NISBA has
this-
put forth, right, for,
Yeah.
and again, I can't recall 2 or 3.
So,
We can gain, we can go look at the actual guidance on that and provide.
right,
that to you as
and
well.
then that would be the stipulation in the policy to say, according to
Yeah.
NISBA regulations.
On an individual basis, seniors could be.
Well, that would be the NISBA basic
I would
guideline.
just call out the regulation.
Yeah.
I'll do the regulation.
Right, you don't have to state anything. If the
Individual
NISBA,
student can apply for it.
I don't know, do they have to apply for it?
I don't think they
The
do.
student?
Yeah.
Because actually, it says in the policy right now, student involvement in other activities, including participating in intramural sports and interscholastic sports, will not be substituted for meeting the physical education requirements. So I think we
Correct.
definitely want to call out.
Correct. we do.
Correct.
Well, we
Two
can
different
revisit
things.
that and,
So,
Do we want to adopt, or do we want
I
to
think
just
we
do a
need to
second
table to
reading
get this
only?
clarified.
Yeah, just to ver-
We can do it as a second reading and actually do a third reading and adoption.
yes,
Either next month or even at March 23rd if you wanted to move it up.
if we can find out more information about that.
I'll get that information to you this week.
Okay, do we need to table this?
No, we can just, we won't adopt, we'll just
Okay.
revert it to just a second reading of this
Okay.
policy.
Okay, do I have a motion to? Go to- How do you want to state that, Mrs. Provost?
Yeah, so we do have one from, originally from Mr. Peters and Ms. Mitchell. So we can just
Okay.
use theirs and
Okay.
just say minus, we're gonna remove and adopt the newly revised policy.
Okay, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed, motion carries.
I'll
And,
get
yeah.
some information out there.
And it didn't open up until like today, so that's
Yeah.
why it was hard to go down through it. Okay, adopt the
We did have a
23.
problem last time, I didn't know if we
Yes.
still had a problem.
Yeah, we
I,
did.
I opened it today.
I was able to open it Friday.
Maybe I did too.
Did too.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, adopt the 23-24 academic calendar. Any discussion on that?
Sure, so one of the things on the academic calendar, I think that, I think we've recognized as a problem, and has been a problem for a while, is the actual, the opportunity to provide professional development for teachers. One of the areas that has been we've taken out of the calendar. It depends on the calculations and how we were doing our calculations, and we have scrutinized the calculations to the actual minute. And we were able to bring half-days back into our calendar, but also being very mindful of the community and what the impact of a half-day is on a family. So what we've done with those, and we've worked very closely with PAT on this as well, we put these against something, so it's either a weekend or another day, but we're gonna work with PAT to be very mindful that we're gonna get the word out. This is not an opportunity for people to extend the weekend and extend the vacation. This is meant for professional development. It'll be our pilot year to look at the calendar from this perspective, and if you know, that, I don't have any reason to believe we wouldn't be able to maintain that in the future. I think what's so critical is we talk about professional development and the need for that across the district. So what you see on here are 5 professional development days, and one of the areas that's been definitely a concern of teachers, especially in the elementary school, was the need for additional half-days at the end of the school year. That's not really a great professional development day, I'll say the first thing to everybody, so we did add one. The very last day of school is a half-day where we can wrap up the end of the school year in the elementary school. The high school will already be out because of Regents Week, but it'll give that opportunity. But everything else, 5 half-day professional development days, so we can actually provide that for staff. And I think that it'll be hugely beneficial to staff, because I think what we have to recognize too is, in an ideal world, we can pay people, right, and say, all right, we're gonna do professional development, and we're gonna pay you after school to do that. But realistically, not everybody has to participate. You don't have to come. You're not required to come if it's after your school hours. But if we do have half days like this, we can require certain things and say everyone is participating in these kind of things. PAT recognizes the importance of the professional development and the need for it, so that's what we did as a calendar.
Question?
Absolutely.
More of a statement, just to clarify, so the half-days, when you're counting up the minutes, basically give you more credit than just one.
So they don't
full
count
day.
they don't count against you, but minutes still matter. So I'm going to ask Mrs. Tribouillet to talk to us about the minutes we have for, because everyone's heard of the minutes before. Shannon, can you tell us how many minutes we have on both sides of campus?
I think it's 900
We're right now.
hours and .50 for elementary, and we need 900 hours for elementary, so we just made it, and 990 hours for middle school, high school, and we're at 1,000 something. So there's a big discrepancy in the
We
two.
spoke to other schools too, and to make sure we were doing it properly. So we, and compared what we did with what other schools are doing as well. So I think we're meeting what we're supposed to meet.
Okay.
I'm confident in that.
So the
Half-day doesn't count against the district as those
as a
are.
full day would, is that, do I have that right?
So a full day of superintendent's conference day is part of 180 days.
Okay.
Okay, and so, but the half-days are also part of those 180 days as well.
But on a superintendent's conference day, you don't get any instructional minutes, and then the half day you do. And you're only allowed 4 superintendent's conference days throughout the year, full days.
So two of ours are associated with the first days of school, and then one of them is associated with the parent conferences in the fall, and then the other one is the March day, which we actually have this week coming up, in this current calendar.
Okay, so making the half-days a full day and doing it every other month is more painful or doesn't work as well.
You can only have 4.
You
You're
can
only allowed 4.
Got it.
That's the thing, like, it would be ideal, it would be ideal if you could say, all right, instead of all these half-days, which definitely we can
Yeah, just want to
recognize,
have a good answer when I'm
right,
asking.
but we're not allowed to give more full days.
Got it,
That's the rule, there's only 4.
okay.
So,
And the way the current schedule is, doesn't really allow for any professional development, right? Not much, because you have your 2 opening days and then parent-teacher conference days on the elementary side, so.
and the other part about it too, I think, when I was the director of curriculum and we were still doing half days, a complaint of the community was that we were doing it because, I don't know if we had the greatest partnership. I feel like we've got a really good partnership right now with PAT, but I would say to you, in the past, it was like, well, superintendents are looking at it like, no, we're not gonna put that on a Friday, we're not gonna put that up against a vacation day. We're not doing that because someone's gonna take an extra day off. And so what you were doing is you were throwing a monkey wrench into the family's world by saying, oh, a half day here. Now, don't get me wrong, I realize we're still throwing the monkey wrench, but you as a family could say, you know what? We're gonna use that to our benefit as a family and say, all right, we're gonna take a long weekend, or we're gonna do something different. Again, I realize not everybody can do that, but we're at least trying to be as mindful of that, and we'll work with PAT to be very, very cognizant of what we're doing with those days. And the professional development committee, Shannon's been working closely with them, trying to plan not only those, but in addition to those half days, we also have 6 hours of 5 hours, excuse me, of time that we have devoted to additional hours that teachers are on their contract. So I feel very confident we've got some good opportunities for professional development.
How many half days did we do last year?
Half days, we didn't do any. We haven't done them in 2 years.
Yeah, well, it's been a number of years.
It's been a long time.
There used to be
So you're pointing out like the families.
And I don't,
Having families.
I do think that it
Yeah.
does, it does. And I think that, and that's why we're trying to be so mindful of making sure that it made sense, rather than throwing it, throwing it on a Wednesday.
Yeah, that's when it
Do you know what I
was.
mean? And they were, a lot of times were on a Wednesday, a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and for a good reason,
Decreasing.
but not good reasons for our families, right?
And there used to be a regulation where you had to have a certain minimum hours per week,
Right.
and so you couldn't do the
Right.
half days before. So that might be why you stopped doing them, and
Yeah.
now it's just
Was
minutes.
a combination of
It's
that and
hours
the,
per
and
year.
the
Right.
and the 900.
And now they do the 900 and the 990. But yeah,
Correct, and that's.
years ago, it was, you have to have 25.5 hours or something like that
Correct.
during the week.
Oh, each week.
Yes, so your half days were close. We always made it. Close. Okay, motion to adopt the calendar. Motion, Mrs. Mitchell, second, Mrs. Morgan. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have no other public comment, I think. Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Mr. Peters, second, Mrs. Morgan.